This is Twit.
Well, it's interesting. With the recent increase in tension in the Middle East, a lot of attention has been placed on the possibility of Iran having cyber attacks as part of their arsenal against the U.S. And a lot of people have gotten very worried about the possibility of that spilling over into the private sector. Now, when security issues shift in this way, a lot of people get really worried. But the question is, has anything really changed? I talked to a lot of people for an article I wrote in Dark Reading this week, and they uniformly said that the risk today is really no greater than it was 2 weeks ago. We just have some new attention on new aspects. Mark Testoni is CEO of SAP NS2. Now, that's the large enterprise security division of SAP. And he says that the nation-state players are always engaged, always probing in the cyber realm, and always trying to see where they can gain an advantage. He points out that this is much different than the kind of dynamics that we saw when he and I, for that matter, were young, where the Cold War was playing out primarily on the physical battlegrounds and in the diplomatic era. Now, another person, Peter Carraro, who is cyber governance manager at a company called Varsla, said that 2 weeks ago, he might have said that the biggest immediate threat came from criminal organizations, and they're fairly dependable. They have a very straightforward goal. They want to extract data or behavior from a company that they can convert to money. The nation-state sponsored attacks are going to have very specific, perhaps not financially focused goals, but they're going to differ depending upon the exact nation that we're talking about. And some people have told us what these are. For example, China is known to be after intellectual property. They've had long and very successful campaigns at stealing intellectual property from American companies. Now, some of that is defense related, some of it is simply economic related. Other companies or other countries look for cash. North Korea is primarily noted for this. Why? Because sanctions make it difficult for them to get hard Western cash. Therefore, they have tended to have a lot of different campaigns that have gotten cash out of Western financial institutions. We know and have seen a lot of reports about Russia being interested in political aims and in aims that deal with providing information or disinformation, as some would have it, to American and other Western audiences. Iran has always had 2 or 3 different things that they were doing. One is to find out about their critics. They have a known lengthy set of campaigns that have gone against, say, the travel industry, trying to figure out where individuals were traveling, where they're staying, how they're moving, where they're going to be. They're also known for throwing what I would characterize as chaos bombs, things that just cause confusion and chaos, and they're awfully darn good at it. Now, one of the people that I talked to, Sergio Caltagirón, who's vice president of threat intelligence at Dragos, pointed out that industrial targets are also vulnerable and that these can be very easy ways into an organization. Jason Kent, the hacker in residence at Sequence Security, pointed out that all it takes is 1 or 2 unpatched systems on a shop floor to open up an entire network to attack. So what are companies supposed to do about this? Everyone that I talked to pointed out the importance of something that our very own Brian Chee has talked about over and over again, and that's defense in depth. layers of security. Some people refer to it as the Swiss cheese model of security. That's where you know that in any given layer there may be a hole, but the holes don't all line up. And with any luck, if you have enough layers, none of the holes go all the way through. Mark Testoni, I mentioned him at SAP NS2, he said that those layers should include culture. Cybersecurity is cultural, he says, and it needs to be recognized that technologies are tools in the battle, but they aren't themselves the battle. And he pointed out the critical importance of taking this all the way to the executive boardroom and the C-suite. As a matter of fact, he said that he can imagine a day when companies are evaluated by regulators and the market on their cybersecurity and resilience in the same way that today they're evaluated on their financial statements. So the good news is that all of these challenges can be opportunities. Mark Testoni said, I think we have to evolve the debate from whether we do cyber in organizations to how we can create value from it. And that may be the toughest part. Looking at the international discord and confusion as a real opportunity for companies to find new ways to bring value to their position in the market. So I want to turn to my co-host now. Lou, I know that you are part of a commercial organization. So as a manager there, how much attention do you pay to it when the possibility of nation state cybersecurity activity is in the news? Is that something that's really on your radar screen at all?
Absolutely. Absolutely. I think that large organizations, especially like Microsoft and others, are always looking for this data that's going to reveal any type of campaign, not only against nation states, but also against businesses. Companies like Google, Microsoft, Facebook, they are large targets, and they just know that eventually things will come, and they have to be ready. And so by looking for these signs, it definitely help. But the problem here is a lot of times they're not always going to find the signs. And so they have to be ready from another point of view, which is why they have organizations. These large businesses have organizations that actually continue to almost pen test and verify, fuzz test environments and different software to make sure that they can know about the vulnerabilities before they're exploited and before they're used by other campaigns, both in the global arena and the local arena. And so they're spending a lot of money to do so. And I can tell you it does help, but it's not going to get everything. And that's kind of where paying attention to the signals will really help.
Well, Brian, Lou talked about paying attention to the signals and things of that nature, but you have seen an awful lot of nation-state activity in your career. Realistically, we can say soothing words to private enterprise security professionals, but is there anything they can realistically do to protect themselves against a nation-state sponsored attack?
Personally, I think it's going to take an awful lot of education. That's really the bottom line. So what I tell a lot of my students, what I tell a lot of the people I brief is that the really huge difference between the guys that are trying to grab your money and the nation states that are trying to grab your knowledge is patience. So there's a thing we say, a lot of people in the security industry consider China as being the number one threat. And they have patience. They are willing to collect grains of sand. You do that long enough and you have your own beach. Just look at what's happened on, a lot of those new fancy fighter jets and bombers and ships and so forth look an awful lot like product produced in the United States. We need to educate people. We need to make sure that everybody understands this whole concept of collecting grains of sand. We need to be able to go and say, hey, I'm not willing to walk away from my laptop unless it's locked. I'm willing to make sure that I'm using current SSL certificates. I need to be willing to make sure that I'm changing passwords on a regular basis. And I think this is going to be something that needs to be started in the K through 12 arena. We need to train our children. We need to get them used to this. Personally, I think, this is something I say to Lou, being someone that works for a company that builds operating systems, is we are long past the point where we actually need to start having something we know and something we have. We need multi-factor authentication. We need it now. We need to stop making compromises. Password vaults are a big deal. K through 12 should have password vaults. We need to make this part of our culture and slow these people down.
I love the idea of beginning the process of security awareness in K through 12, and even beginning to up the security practices. Well, Lou, I want to come to you with one last question. A lot of companies really feel they have two options when it comes to security. One is defending themselves against attacks that take place, and the other is reducing their profile out on the internet. In other words, reducing their visibility. Now, I hate the idea of security through obscurity. I think it doesn't work. But which do you like better? The idea of trying to reduce your attack surface on the internet, or to defend against the attacks that you know are going to come against you regardless of what that profile might be?
Actually, I think it's a little bit of both. There's a lot of times where organizations will have endpoints and nodes that are exposed to the internet that they don't necessarily always use. Plus, consolidating down to single points of entry allows you better sometimes to actually monitor and secure those endpoints. So having these kind of single points of entry that you can essentially monitor and verify and continue and put bots and AI and all this types of stuff on it will allow you to have a better handle of what's going on. So like a lot of services out there, I know that Facebook likes to stand up new services and so does Google. And a lot of times, sometimes these services, they don't play out. Sometimes they're in for internal purposes and they don't necessarily pull them down over time or sunset them. And so I think that by reducing that surface area, by sunsetting them when you're not using them, or even by saying, hey, we are using them and now they're becoming mainstream, let's consolidate this down to a single service, or let's move it closer to the metal, or let's kind of route it through a single point of entry. They tend to kind of leave it out there, and they feel it. Sometimes it's for performance reasons, sometimes it's just because it's built on different infrastructure or whatnot, and so they leave it out there, and that just leaves them exposed to another point of entry that is used for cyber terrorism and cyber threats. So I think it's a little bit of both. I think you can't do one without the other. And you by reducing your surface area, you can make it a little slightly easier for you to monitor and verify things. But in the same sense, the problem still exists whether you leave them out there or not. So I think you're going to have to put money and effort on both sides of things for sure.